screen clearly. So I will just send the link to the website too. You can access it. Okay, I'll share it after this talk. Chat, sorry. Yep. Okay, so I don't know how many of us have seen this meme on Twitter or WhatsApp where we had a party, then we had the audience, then you had the waiters, then you had someone cooking the food. Okay, so if you don't have any idea of what backend development is everything about any application you see on the internet that you don't see but you interact with. So it's like that part of the system that is existing. It's powering everything you're doing, but you are not directly interacting with it. You interact with it through the front end. I'm sure the front end speaker must have touched on that. Okay, so if you are here, I'm guessing you're interested in getting started with backend development. And there are quite a number of things you need to know, you need to understand and get familiar with, even before you start bothering about learning maybe a programming language or every other thing that has to do with backend development. Okay, and this page I'm sharing gives a very nice overview of everything you need to know step by step from the beginning to the end. Or there's no end in the learning, but at least to get you to the place where I guess everyone's goal of learning backend development, front-end development, programming is maybe build stuff or get employable, or maybe for a personal project. So to get to that stage where you know enough to start stuff, open a code editor and write code and have users interact with it. There are a couple of things we need to understand. I'll try to touch on as many of them as I can before we reach the end of this session. You can also follow through. I'll send the link in the chat. So first of all, before you venture into backend development, you need to understand what the internet is. So many of us think maybe not many of us, but I know there are some people that believe maybe the internet is a computer sitting somewhere and Google and everybody is connected to that computer. But no, the internet is a philosophy. It's an idea that many separate devices can share information, can connect together, and that connection of multiple devices across multiple regions all over the world is what comes together to form the internet. So every one of us is kind of a stakeholder in the internet. If you have a computer, you're a stakeholder in the internet, and you're part of the internet, you're actively part of the internet. Okay, so how does the internet work? How am I able to stream this video call I'm streaming? How am I able to access this website? How does the internet knows that, okay, I want to access roadmap.sh/backend? How does it get there? How does it fetch that resource? So those are some of the things as an aspiring backend developer, you have to understand how it works. Okay, so the internet is a global network of computers, like I said before, connected to each other through a standardized set of protocols. Yeah, so let's go to the protocols part. It's so much chaos. There are like millions of computers in the world. And for all of those computers to be able to communicate properly, you need standard protocols, just the way humans can easily communicate, because I'm speaking English and you understand the English I'm speaking. So there are different protocols that make the internet what it is. We have IP address. You must have heard that somewhere. Internet protocol address. You have a TCP protocol. You have your HTTP protocol. You can take those down and explore every one of them deeply. But every of those protocols have defined set of rules that defines how computers should communicate with each other. And because computers know that this is the rules they have to abide with, that is why the internet can exist. So there are different branches under the internet, the internet part of things you need to understand. So one is, how does the internet work? So we've explained that it's a global network of interconnected computers communicating through standard and defined protocols. Okay, we might not go into the nitty-gritty of how those protocols work because some of those protocols are quite complex and outside the scope of this call. So one very important protocol in how the internet works is HTTP. Okay, so you've probably seen your URL. You say HTTP, you say colon, you say forward slashes, and the URL goes like that. And maybe you've never wondered what HTTP is. So HTTP is the TCP/IP-based application layer communication protocol, which standardizes how clients and servers communicate with each other. Okay, that's quite maybe not easy to understand. So let's break it down. For every communication, even between two humans, there are always two parties, two or more parties. One person is giving, another person is receiving, right? So let's say in this case, the giver is the server. In this, let's say in this scenario, as I'm giving this stuff, I am the server, and every other person on this call is a client. So TCP or HTTP defines how the both of us will communicate with each other, so you can understand what I am saying. And if I'm supposed to get any feedback from you, I can understand what you're saying. So that's what HTTP does. So there are different versions of HTTP. We won't go too deep into that, but it's good to understand how HTTP work, how HTTPS work. That's the secured version of the hypertext transfer protocol. Okay, so that's one part of the internet, that protocol, TCP, IP, HTTP, and they all build on top of each other. If you're taking notes, you have IP at the base. IP is like your home address. So let's say I wanted to deliver a mail to you. I need to know where you're located to send that mail to you. So in this case, IP is like that address. TCP is, lets me know that you are at home, I can send this to you. HTTP is now more high level, maybe determines how you receive the package or what you should be expecting. So that is one way to break down IP, TCP, and HTTP. It's like a progression. Okay, so let's leave that aspect. Let's touch a little bit on DNS. So if you open this drop down, the DNS system is the phone book system of the internet. Okay, so a typical IP address looks like, if you've seen an IP address before, it looks like maybe 192.168. something. It's very hard for humans to remember IP addresses. IP addresses are like phone numbers, and they even get more complicated than phone numbers in another version of IP addresses. So humans cannot understand IP addresses, right? So some very smart people came together and say, let us define a protocol of how we can map an IP address to a particular name that humans can understand. So yeah, so they came up with the domain name system. We might not be able to explore the full detail of how the domain name system works, but one thing you should understand is, for example, when you try to access a URL in your browser, like this one I currently have opened, the internet does not understand what roadmap.sh is. It understands what the IP address that this roadmap.sh represents, what it is. This roadmap.sh is just for humans to be able to relate with the system. So to not dwell too much on that, we'll also touch on domain names. So you have your .com domains and all of this other stuff. Okay, so another thing we should touch on before diving deeper into backend development is hosting. Okay, so we said the internet is a network of interconnected computers, and they communicate with each other through one way or the other. So let's say I have a website. I guess every one of us here knows what a website is. I can host a website on my computer and have every other person on the internet access my computer directly, request for the resource of that website and have it displayed in their own browser. It's as simple as that. But instead of having those files hosted locally on my computer, because my computer cannot always be on, we usually move them to a hosting service. So those hosting servers are always up, and everybody around the world can easily connect with them securely. Okay, so that's that for hosting. So after you have a general understanding of how the internet works, what is DNS, what is HTTP, what is IP, what is hosting. You to excel in backend development, your next stage in your journey is having a very little understanding of how front end works. If you're like me, I don't like front end, but if you're in the last front end session, you'll have a little understanding of how front end works. So for me to see this page, so it's written in HTML and CSS. That's where you see all of these colors and all of this beautiful structure that comes with the page. Okay, so that's for that. We already have an understanding of how the internet works. We already have a very tiny understanding of what front end is. So the next stage in our backend development journey is understanding operating systems. So don't get scared when you hear operating systems. You don't need to know operating systems, like be able to build an operating system to be a backend developer. No, you just need to have very little understanding of how operating system works. Okay, so there are many things that makes you a good backend developer, and most of those things are tied to your understanding of operating systems. So many of us might be on Windows, and we probably cannot relate with Windows operating system. You might have heard of Linux before. You might have heard of Mac. There are hundreds of operating systems that exist. You don't need to know all of them. The most popular ones used for servers are Linux operating system. So it is usually good to understand how your operating system works, because most of your work as a backend developer, as a programmer, depends on the operating system. So some things to know about an operating system is terminal usage. So you're probably wondering what a terminal is. I don't know how many of us have watched all of these Hollywood films where they try to depict an hacker and you see someone sitting in front of a white and black screen with many, many things being printed out to the screen. So that's typically what a terminal looks like, but it's not that scary. What you need to know in terminal usage, you don't need to know a lot. You just need to have an idea. Everything here is touch, have an idea. Remember, the goal is to be a backend developer, not a terminal user. You need to know how to apply it, when to apply it, to proceed. So that's one, how OS works in general, process management, threads and concurrency. We'll touch on that, memory management, interprocess communication. Okay, so that's some complex stuff that maybe as someone that is an absolute beginner, you might not need to go into details of, but understanding how operating system works, understanding memory management, understanding threads and concurrency would help you to become the backend developer you want to be. So yeah, it's scary, to be very honest with you, but when you take all of this information bit by bit, one after the other, you notice that it just automatically comes at you. Good. So once we are done with all of this theory, once you understand all of this many theory, the next thing to do is to learn a programming language. Okay, so computers only understand programming languages. A computer might not understand all of this English I'm speaking here. So to communicate with computers, you need to learn a programming language. So that's kind of where the real learning goes into place. So there are different ways to learn a programming language, different places you can learn programming languages from. I can drop a couple of helpful links after here. One is Free Code Camp. There are many resources there. There's code.org. There's YouTube. Yeah, please utilize YouTube. Okay, so choice of programming language. One big question people always ask is, what programming language should I learn? Should I be learning JavaScript? Should I be learning Java? Should I learn C#? Should I learn Python? Should I learn Ruby? Should I learn PHP? And you probably know much more programming languages than that. Okay, so one thing you should ask yourself when you want to decide what programming language to learn is, what tasks do you want to achieve? What tasks do you want to achieve? And one thing you must always bear in mind also is the end users of whatever you're building, whatever you're developing, they don't care what programming language you use. all they care about is, can I use this product? Can I use this website? Does it work? For example, I'm on this website. I don't know the programming language that was used to develop the website, but I'm here and it's working and I don't care that much. So pick one that is easier for you when you're picking the programming language, especially the first programming language you learn. Um, Look for anyone that is more comfortable for you. Some people find JavaScript more comfortable. Some people like me find Python more expressive and comfortable. Find one, learn it properly. So don't be a programming language advocate. Don't be, hey, it's either this programming language or not. Be a programmer, understand how programming works. When you understand how programming works, learning a programming language will become the least of your problems as a developer. So after you've learned a programming language, you probably learn a framework. So what is a framework? So programming languages are just bare. So let's say JavaScript, for example. So JavaScript is just there. You can decide to use JavaScript for front end. We have React, we have Angular, we have quite a number of frameworks. You can decide to use Python, you have Django, you have Flask, you can decide to use Java, you have Spring. On C#, you have MVC. On PHP, you have Laravel, you have different frameworks.
Can anyone hear Tommy?
No, I'm not hearing you.
I think he has. I think he's facing some network issues. Uh-oh.
Sorry, my network tripped off. Let me share my screen again. Please, can anyone hear me? Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so when you understand the programming language, there are some basic things you need to, there are some checkboxes you need to check before you say you understand the programming language. One of the things you need to know about the programming language is the syntax. You need to know some standards in the programming language. You need to know how to write algorithms in the programming language and many other things. So don't bother now if you don't know what all of these things I'm saying is. You just need to understand that you need to learn a programming language to advance your backend development career. Okay, so when you're done learning a programming language, the next thing you need to know, the next thing on your list for backend development is Git. Okay, so go back a little bit into time to understand what Git is. So I don't know how many of us have heard of the creator of Linux. So he was building an operating system, and anyone that has ever dealt with operating systems, they are a really complex piece of software. And sometimes you need more than one person to, develop operating systems. Most of the time, it's probably a team working on it. So one major problem was how will two people work on a file? For example, let's even take a normal Microsoft Word document as an example. Imagine myself and anyone here on this call, we're working on a Microsoft Word document and we're editing the same file. I made a change, then maybe you got the file. How do you know what changes I made? How do you not mistakenly override the changes I made? So those are the problems Git solve. Git is a version control system, so it helps you version your software development projects. So you can have multiple versions And even when something bad happens on one version, you can easily go back to the previous version. They are having multiple lifelines. That's primarily what Git helps you to do. So there are different version control systems apart from Git. Yeah, so when you're done learning a version control system, one other thing you need to understand is repository hosting service. So what is a repository? A repository is a place where you keep your code. It's as simple as that. So there are different repository services. The most popular one is GitHub. I don't know if anyone here has heard of GitHub before, but yeah, GitHub is really popular. Understanding GitHub, understanding Git, knowing a programming language. Once you have those three things checked off, you're ready to become a backend developer. Okay, good. So let's say you already know the internet, how it works. You already know basic front end. You already have knowledge of operating systems. You already understand the programming language. You already know Git, version control. What's next? Storage. Now, storage is a very, very important part of our application. And sometimes maybe for those of us that are students, say you interact with your school portal and they say maybe something is not loading, maybe something was deleted, maybe you can't find your record. It all happens at the storage level. So database is a very popular word. I believe every one of us here would have come across the word database. So what's a database? A database is where you store your data. It's very descriptive. So understanding databases is very key because there's no way you can build backend applications without having a database, right? So imagine you are building this website. I'll keep referencing this website. All of this data you have in this website, if they are dynamic, they were probably loaded out of a database, then given to the front end, then before you can see them. So understanding how databases works is very integral to your journey as a developer. Okay, so we have different types of databases. We have relational databases and we have non-relational databases on a very high level. So there are different ways humans have thought about storing data. One of the most popular way of storing data is on tables. So it's as simple as having a pen and a book and drawing rows and columns. And that is what a database looks like. It's just a lot of rows and columns. So relational databases have a very special way to store data. Non-relational databases have a very special way to store data. I might not go into that much detail so we don't get confused, but there are different types of relational databases. We have MySQL, we have Postgres, we have different types of relational. For NoSQL, that's non-relational databases. We have MongoDB, quite a number of them. Don't bother too much about this now, but you should know that it is part of the things you need to understand on your journey to becoming a back-end developer. So the next thing is still more about databases. Like I said, database is a very, very wide field. So people actually go to school to study databases. So we'll just keep that part. Then the next thing we'll move on to is APIs. Now, APIs are very, 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 very important. In fact, your primary job as a backend developer, 70 to 60% of what you'll be doing every day as a backend developer is building APIs. So at the beginning of my talk, I gave an example of a party where you have the cook, you have the people that came to eat, and you have the waiters. So let's say your API is an intermediary between your front end and your back end. So how does front end and back end communicate? They communicate through an API. API is like what is in between that communication protocol. So understanding APIs are very, very important. It's one of the things you really need to learn So there are different API development protocols, different API development standards. The most popular one is REST. REST stands for Representational State Transfer. Okay, so it just helps systems communicate with each other. That is basically what REST does. And in the web development environment, it helps front end communicate with the back end. Okay, so we have different type of RESTful APIs. We have JSON APIs, we have SOAP API, we have gRPC. You don't want to really bother about all of this now. You should just understand that you need to understand how APIs work to become a backend developer. And a very popular API development pattern is using the REST structure. You can make more research on how the REST structure works. So after learning about APIs, one very important thing you need to understand is authentication. So authentication is what happens when you log in. When you type in your username and password on the website, if you put in invalid credentials, the website tells you wrong details or whatever is the message. Well, there are quite a number of authentication techniques. As a backend developer, you will be expected to understand at least 2 to 3 of them properly to properly function as a backend developer. We have cookie-based authentication, we have OAuth, we have a number of them. You might not really understand them now, and breaking them down might be outside the scope, but one thing you should know is authentication is very important. It's what prevents me from being able to log in, for example, to your Facebook account. And whenever you have maybe issues of someone, maybe stealing your password or being able to hack your account, it is most of the time an authentication issue. Okay, so after understanding how authentication works, at this point, I'm very happy to announce to you that you are now a backend developer. Once you have an understanding of APIs, you understand databases, you understand operating systems, and you understand how the internet works, you are now a backend developer. So now getting into the more slightly complicated aspect of things. Okay, testimony says I round up. Okay. Yeah, so in summary, let's not go too down this path because it gets really advanced from there on. So yeah, in your backend development journey, your learning journey, I hope you enjoy everything you learn. I hope you learn the right tools and not have to, go around like some of us had to do. So yes, please make proper use of this roadmap, and I hope to see you as a backend developer very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tommy, for that very educative session. Okay, we said we're ready to become backend engineers. I think being able to summarize everything you said, talking about to build a career in backend development, we need to understand APIs, operating systems, databases, and how the internet works. So thank you very much once again for accepting our invitation, for sharing your knowledge with us. At this point, we'd like to take questions if anyone wants to ask Tommy questions before he leaves. And yeah, I think during your session, you also mentioned sharing resources to help anyone who wants to get started in backend development. Okay, I think someone has a question. Okay, I would unmute the person now. Okay. Oh. Okay, you can go ahead, Maxwell.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for that wonderful section, Oluwatomisi. It was very insightful. I just want to add one or two things to what you have already said. When you talk about how internet works and how computer it comes together to make up that internet. For some of us who might be thinking their computer that is not on internet, how are they contributing? So you must have an IAC you are connected to before you become part of that internet that he's mentioning or he talked about. Also, the OS layouts, he also mentioned how internet works at the IP TCP level. So there are several models of the OSI layouts where you have the physical data link network, transport section, presentation, and application layer. And where the HTTC sits is at that seventh layer, the application layer. And how all this protocol interwoven is what actually makes the network what the network is. And as a back-end person or someone who is interested in becoming a back-end, it's good you have a good understanding of what he just mentioned today. And I really, really appreciate him for taking out time for sharing this roadmap on how we can be a better back-end person. Thank you once again, and thank you to the organizers of this event.
Thank you very much, sir, for that contribution. That was very, very helpful. I think someone has a question. Yeah, if Tommy would like to answer. So the first person says, Omar says, please, I need more explanation on difference between front-end developer and a back-end developer. Then the second person asks, does being a back-end developer put you at a disadvantage in the job market to those who are full-stack developers in terms of pay and getting jobs? Okay.
Okay. So for the first question, more explanation on difference between front-end developer and a back-end developer. Okay, so think of a website. Think of the pages you see. Let's say you are on YouTube, for example. You can see red, you can see white, you can see those beautiful colors. That is what a front-end developer does. Now, on the other side of the backend, what the backend developer handles is the parts where you save the videos. For example, the video you're watching, it was stored somewhere. How do you gain access to where that video was stored? Yes, that's the major difference. What you see in a website, what you see in an application, in your mobile app, in your web application, that is what the front end does. Like it says, the front end facing, the user facing side of things. What you don't see, the database aspect, the security aspect, that is what the backend developer handles. For the second question, it says, does being a backend developer put you at a disadvantage in the job market? Okay, so yes, it's yes and no. At the end of the day, the slogan is just be very good at what you are. Being a backend developer does not put you at a disadvantage, although most companies might want to hire a full stack developer because, I mean, you can have one person doing both. But I promise you, if you are really, 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 really good at whatever you're doing, back end, front end, nobody will take a pass on you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for that answer, Tommy. So thank you everyone for joining today's session. I don't know, Tommy, do you mind sharing your social media handles in case anyone wants to reach out to you after the session? If you could do that. And before you leave, I'd also like to ask if you could give just one advice to anyone who is considering starting a career in back-end development, what would it be?
Learn as much as you can. Don't stop learning.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. So like I said, we'd love to hear from you. Kindly share how this session went on your social media platform. You can tag TechSemester, you can also tag Tommy, and you are also expected to fill the form that will be sent to our WhatsApp groups and Telegram page. For the person who asked for the link to the recordings, this meeting was recorded live, so you can watch the replay on YouTube. The link will also be sent across after the session. So thank you everyone once again for joining. Our next session will be on Monday by 4:50 p.m. and we'll be going into the world of UI UX. So I'm really excited about that. So ensure you invite your friends, your colleagues to join us if they haven't joined yet. Next week is the final phase of the Get Into Tech program. So thank you everyone once again for joining. Enjoy your weekend. Bye for now.